Recording in progress.
Yeah.
Got it.
Got it.
Right. Okay. We'll just briefly start with how the meeting normally starts. John, have you got any news about anyone?
Not significant, but I went to see the Miller Orchestra on Saturday with old John. I bumped into Cyril and Anita. First time I've seen Cyril for a few weeks, and he was in good form. Enjoyed it. There he
Good.
was, rocking in the aisle, still in the mood.
Where was this at?
City Hall.
And
There were about 2,000 of us old codgers.
who was on?
Glenn Miller. Well, not him.
I didn't hear that bit.
Yeah.
Is it his nephew?
No. His nephew does run a band, or did run a Glenn Miller band. It's Ray McVeigh. He must be about 120.
Yeah.
He was held up by props. He was. Yeah. The band was good though. Good music, Glenn Miller.
I've seen the nephew at Bucks.
I've seen that band.
Yeah, I've seen him a few times. Yeah. He won't give in. Won't give in. Yeah.
Wonderful.
I had a chat with Eric. Eric's fine. He's still got lingering man flu, but he's battling on. He's okay.
Yeah.
And Brian the Tie sends his best wishes.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. We've just got Peter, Paul, and Mary.
Mary.
So,
Can I just? Sorry.
Go on.
No, before we start with Kev, I just wanted to do an advert for the silent auctions that we're doing. We've got a few bids in, but we could do with some more, everybody, if you're having a look at what's been sent out. And the deadline is next Monday night.
Okay.
So if anyone is seriously looking at putting a little bid in, we all know that it's going to be a fantastic good cause for Kevin Sinfield and Rob Andrews' efforts.
Yeah.
So it's just an advert, guys. If you're looking at it, maybe the odd present you're still trying to find. There's some great ideas there. Just have a look. Anything that you bid is gratefully received.
Yeah, a few quid for a book, won't it, for Christmas.
And I'm bringing everything to the meeting tomorrow. So if anyone's at the meeting tomorrow, then you'll have a chance to have a look at the items personally.
Yeah. Okay. Right. All right. So
end of advert.
Last
end of
is not big enough, is it?
End of advert.
Yeah. So the next thing, the next usual thing is Dave the Beard.
Right, I've cut it short just to local stuff today. So I'm starting in Division 1 football. After Ipswich could only draw at Fleetwood and Plymouth lost at home to Port Vale, a win for the Owls would have taken them up. But a 0-0 draw.
Oh,
Have you woken up yet, John?
What a shame.
Well, what a shame. Your own word. I'm satisfied with that. Bearing in mind we haven't got any forwards.
Barnsley winners at Peterborough moved into 4th spot, though 8 points behind the Owls. Doncaster in Division 2 suffered another home defeat, 2-0 to Walsall, and they dropped to 13th. National League, Chesterfield and Boreham Wood both lost 1-0 away from home. Chesterfield at Halifax and Boreham Wood at Eastleigh. Kevin, if you're wondering why we mentioned Boreham Wood, there is a connection. They're not local, of course, for Chris, and everybody's got interested in since their cup run and running the league last season. Chesterfield slipped to 4th, 8 points behind leaders Notts County, and Boreham Wood to 12th, 5 points adrift of the playoff places. Sheffield FC won 3-2 at Grantham in the Northern Premier League Division 1 East, and Stocksbridge drew 1-1 at home to North Shields. Sheffield are now 9th and Stocksbridge Park Steels still 3rd, although 10 points behind second place Stockton and 18 points behind leaders Worksop Town. Hallam, after losing at home to Thackley 3-2 in the 3rd round of the Northern Counties East League Cup, bounced back with a 2-1 win at Barton Town. Handsworth lost at home 1-0 to Goldcar United and stay 9th in the Premier Division with Hallam 10th. Ice hockey, Sheffield Steelers had a poor weekend, losing at home 3-2 on Saturday to the Cardiff Devils. A visit to Coventry Blaze on Sunday saw them 4-3 down with 53 seconds to go when Danny Christo equalised for the Steelers to earn a point. No further goals in overtime, and Coventry took the extra point, scoring the only goal in 10 penalty shots. Steelers are now third, 3 points behind second place Coventry Blaze,
Excellent.
but with 4 games in hand.
You speak for yourself.
And there's the Coventry connection. However, the Steelers are now 9 points behind leaders Guildford Flames, but with only 2 games in hand. Blaze are 6 points behind the leaders, but having played 2 games more. Coventry won 5-1 at Manchester and then lost at home to Guildford Flames 5-4 before beating the Steelers on Sunday.
Okay.
Rugby Union in the Championship, English Championship, Coventry beat Doncaster 47-7.
Excellent.
So Coventry are now third, but trail second place Jersey Reds by 8 points and leaders Ealing by 10. Doncaster are down to 6, 19 points behind the leaders. In the English National League 2 North, defeats for Sheffield RUFC 47-17 at Sedgley Park and Sheffield Tigers 20-11 at Fylde. Rotherham at home to Chester won 26-21 and are 5th. Tigers are 9th, while Sheffield RUFC are 10th. Sedgley Park still top the table, 2 points clear of Fylde.
Right, what about the cricket news, Dave?
That's good. That's good. I would have started that normally, but with Kevin here, I'm finishing with that, so it leads into cricket.
This is almost planned, isn't it?
You know, it almost.
It's
You know,
almost-
just as we can say it.
Hours of rehearsal. Hours of rehearsal.
Anything about Sheffield Tiger Speedway, Dave?
No, I haven't got anything on.
No, because they are Premier League champions. They won the Premiership.
Yeah, the season ended a while ago, so I haven't looked where they're at, if anything. But basketball, a narrow win for the Sheffield Sharks at Bristol Flyers by 76 points to 72. Saw the Steelers stay in 4th, 2 points behind the top 3, who are Bristol Flyers, Leicester Riders and the London Lions. Sheffield Hatters, the women's side, had no fixture till next weekend. And that leads me on to cricket. And where to start with the first test between Pakistan and England, a match that looked like being delayed by 24 hours due to a viral infection in the England camp. Then a draw looked a certainty as England in their first innings scored 657 all out, and Pakistan then all out for 579, just 78 behind. Then in England's second innings, they scored 264 for 7. In just 35 overs, just under 7 and over, before declaring, leaving Pakistan requiring 343 to win. At 80 for 2 at close of play on day 4, any of 4 results were possible, as it was at tea on the final day with Pakistan 259 for 5. Then an amazing England-style batting collapse as Pakistan lost 5 wickets for just 9 runs in 16.2 overs. Though, to be fair, the last 2 did last 8.4 overs as they attempted to see the day out for a draw. England winning by 74 runs. All with a standing wicket-keeper Pope and 3 part-time spinners, with one of those, Livingston, unable to bowl because of injury.
He's
Right.
going to miss the rest of the series as well.
Is
it? Flying
Let's
goalies,
start with stats and records. Maiden overs in England's first innings, there were just 3 out of 101 overs. Pakistan's first innings, there were 21 out of 155. Then in England's second, there was only 1 maiden over out of the 35. And in Pakistan's second innings, there were 28 out of 96. with Anderson bowling 12 of them. All these maiden overs on a flat and docile wicket. The victory ended a run of 11 away tests without a win and secured a first win over Pakistan outside of the UK for 22 years when they beat Pakistan in Karachi. In the first innings, it was England's fastest opening century stand and the fastest they have reached 300. The first time that 4 centuries have been scored on the first day of a test, and the first time since 2007 that England have scored 4 centuries in an innings. England hit 921 runs in 136.5 overs at a scoring rate of 6.73, the fastest of any team batting twice in Test history, while the 506 runs scored on day 1 is a Test record. The runs came off 75 overs with 15 overs left unused, a run rate of 6.75 on day 1. Question, right, here's your first question. Who held the previous record for runs scored on day 1 of a test?
The Aussies.
Australia.
It was Australia. How many and when? Any?
Wasn't Trent Bridge, was it?
500.
Was it Trent Bridge?
Sydney in 1910, 494.
I wasn't
I
there.
just missed that one.
Long Bridge.
I think you can say about this test match, it's cricket, Jim, but not as we know it.
You're absolutely right, Peter. It was everything about it was different. It
Yeah.
featherbed wicket, I think David Gower called it, the Kookaburra ball that's supposed to be softer than anything. Everything against a win by anybody, and yet
Yeah.
each day just broke the mold, didn't it? It was
Yeah.
fabulous. I've spent this morning watching the highlights, believe it or not. Couldn't believe what I'd watched. Brilliant.
Can I ask Kevin a question? Kev, from a pro's point of view, what did you think of England's declaration? Was it an amazing piece of strategy or high risk or something in between?
Well, I think the first thing you'd say, it's brave.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, when they declared, you're thinking, crikey, Pakistan have only got to bat sensibly and they'll win.
Yeah.
That's the initial thoughts, but I kind of look at what's happening with English cricket just at the moment, and everything they seem to do is with intent. It's with purpose. It's positive. I mean, I think with all the talk at the minute about, you know, the future of red ball cricket, and, you know, with all the white ball stuff becoming so popular, you kind of hope that England's sort of approach to it at the minute could be a catalyst to engage the next generation, really, because, you know, we're all, I think I'm particularly, myself, is concerned about where red ball cricket is headed. Yeah. And, you know, if something as dynamic like this is going to engage the next generation, then it might just keep it alive.
Yeah.
It's a change, isn't it, from 20, 30, 40 years ago, when typically British, we could always find something wrong with English cricket. We're going through a phase now where we're in the lead, I think, with cricket. We're challenging all the old rules and approaches, you know, and at the very least it's positive, which is so refreshing. I thoroughly enjoyed what was arguably the most absorbing cricket match at that level I've ever seen in my life. It really was.
It's up there with the very best, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think.
Well, when I saw Joe batting left-handed.
Yes. and his bouncers.
Oh dear.
It's going in an interesting direction, but that just goes to show how confident they must be, and you know, the environment and the culture within the squad must be a very refreshing place to be, that they can express themselves in this way.
Do you claim any credit for the left-handed Joe Root?
Oh, of course, I claim everything.
Exactly what I thought you'd say.
I used to demonstrate to him when it left-handed.
Did-
When I first- when I
Did you
first met-
did you try and convert him?
No, he didn't.
No.
He didn't.
It's a thing though that people can do. I mean, I've batted left-handed. I bat right-handed, but I batted left-handed on a couple of occasions because of an injury, and you can do it. You know, he does it in the nets apparently. So why not?
It was because
I
he wasn't able to do the reverse sweep on that pitch, so that's why he batted left-handed,
Yeah.
apparently. But think that young man, I still regard him as a young man. Look where he's come in 12 months from,
Yeah,
I would say, the depths of despair with the weight on his shoulder of
Yeah.
captaincy to a smiling Joe Root who'll take on anything now in the
Yeah.
right environment. It's fabulous, really. is marvellous.
Well, he was
Kevin.
inventing strokes in the middle of a test match. Wasn't
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
Kevin, can you tell us about your time with developing Joe Root as a 12-year-old?
Good question.
Oh, yes. Of course I can.
Go on then.
Go on then.
Initially, Joe he was 12 years old and he'd been taken on a scholarship by Yorkshire as such on the recommendation of the youth coaches who saw obviously potential in a young lad. And a scholarship then was just some recognition with some free kit and things like that, you know, we think you've got promise. And at the time I was batting coach at Yorkshire, and what I used to do was if any young player got taken on as a scholar like that, if they were a batter, I would invite them into Headingley for an hour and just get to know them a little bit, have a chat and do perhaps some work in the nets. And so I'd arranged to meet Joe at 5 o'clock one evening. Matthew, his dad, brought him up from Sheffield. Before my session with Joe, I was working in the nets with Anthony McGrath. We were doing quite an intensive new ball session, balls flying past his ear hole from short range and that sort of thing. And unbeknown to me, Joe had arrived early with his dad and they were watching this session from the balcony at the indoor school at Headingley.
Mhm.
Anyway, 5 o'clock, Chris knows this story, don't you, Chris? And well, 5 o'clock came and Mags left, and then I met Joe and his dad, and you know, I took Joe into the office. Matthew says, "I'll leave him with you." He didn't come in. He just left Joe with me, and we got chatting. And within a few minutes, I realised that there's something a bit different about this lad. It was like he was 12-year-old, but he could have been 25-year-old. The way he talked, his maturity, he knew about his strengths, his weaknesses, what he wanted to work on. And I was a bit blown away, you know, chatting to him. And I can remember thinking at the time that I thought, if you can bat as well as you can talk, you're going to be good. He could talk very well. And so anyway, I said to him, we had 20 minutes chat, and I was very impressed by what, you know, the way that went. So I said, right, we've got half an hour. We can go down into the nets and do some work together if you want. I said, you want to do that? And he said, yes, please, very politely. So I said, okay. I said, what do you want to do? So he looked at me in the eyes and he just said, I want you to challenge me. And I looked at him. I said, what do you mean by that? And he said, I want the same session Anthony McGrath's just had. So I said, well, I can't do that. I says, I'll hurt you. He says, no, he says, I'll be all right. I said, are you sure? He said, yeah, I'll be fine. You know, that angelic look, smiley face, bit of a wink. And I said, okay. And he got my beans really going. I'm thinking, what is going on here? 12-year-old asking me to challenge him and basically knock his head off. So I said, right, okay. I says, go get all your kits on. I says, don't forget all your protective equipment, helmet, chest guard, arm guard, but everything you've got, put it on. because I'm coming for you. And he said, right. So he came waddling into the hall. You know, like kids have big pads. It's like his pads got like he's got his dad's pads on.
Yeah.
Too big. Anyway, he comes in and I set this little picture of 8 yards long, 3 slips, gully, short leg, new ball, brand new ball. And I thought, right, you've asked for this. So I thought, I'm going to challenge. So I said, right. I said, we've got 20 minutes. I said, now look. I said, you've asked for this. I said, I'm going to come for you. He said, oh, that's good. That's good. I'd like that. Thank you. So I could throw then as well. So I ran in. First few balls with this brand new ball. Good line and length. And he left it and he defended it and he left it and he defended it nice and light. Brilliant technique. Just, you know, excellent technique. And I knew that. I thought, this kid can play. This kid can really play. So I thought, little voice in my head said, bounce him, hit him on the head. And then the other voice said, well, I can't really do that. If I hit him on the head and knock him out, I'll get sacked. Laying out a 12-year-old in his first session. But anyway, the other voice got the better of me and I bowled in this fantastic bouncer that it just rocked back and it just clipped his grill on the way through. And he rocked back and I ran through and I was staring at him from a yard away, just glaring at him. And he looked at me and he nodded and he smiled and he said, oh, I said, that were a good ball, wasn't it? Oh, I thought, wow. And I can remember, you know, we had a brilliant session together and he left with Matthew and they went home and I went up back into the office and the academy director, Ian Hughes, was in there. And I just said, I've just had this little fella, Joe Root, in. He said, okay. He says, what do you think of him? I says, I'm going to make a statement that I've never made before. And he said, what's that? I said, he will open the batting for Yorkshire one day, like at 12. And Ian said to me, he says, well, that's a big statement to make for a 12-year-old. I said, I know, I just feel it. So that was the start of that journey. I mean, you know, the rest is obviously history, but some of the practice sessions we went through and conversations and work we had to do on his technique as he started to grow was quite remarkable, really. Because when he was only small, as you'll remember Joe as a kid, he was only tiny when he was 14, 15, up to 16. And then he started to grow for a couple of years and basically his legs got right long. And he couldn't walk properly. He kept falling over. He got out. He got out 20 times on the trot LBW, playing for the seconds, just falling over and lads were calling him Bambi because he just couldn't, even walking down the street, he'd fall over. So we went through all these processes of working out his technique and his pre-delivery movements and his stance. We had to widen his stance because his legs got longer, and all through this over a couple of years. And he didn't make a millions of runs there. It was a transformational or a transition for him to get through all this. But I can remember once in the West Indies, in Barbados on a pre-season tour. I'm guessing he'd be about 17, 18 now. And we played at the 3Ws ground. I don't know if you guys have been there in Barbados, but there was this little indoor school, a little, almost like a shed with a concrete floor, and it was dark. The fluorescent lights were dark. And the game started, and Joe wasn't playing in the game. So he came to me just after the game started with all his kit on, everything again, helmets, everything on, new ball. He said, come on, coach, 20 minutes. So I said, right, okay, what are we doing now? What's coming next? So he took me into this little dark indoor shed. Pitch set up again, 8 yards, 3 slips, gully, short leg. And he said, right, he said, we're going to play test cricket for 15 minutes. He said, all you've got to do is run in as fast as you can and bounce me and hit me on the head. So I said, okay, I can do that. So we switched on into match play, and I promise you, it was for 15 minutes. We made it very intense. I ran in, hit him on the head 3 times, hit him in the throat, hit him in the grill twice, hit him in the chest, hit him in the balls, hit him in the ribs. everywhere. And every ball I would run down, I'd stare at him and I'd just say, I'm going to kill you. And he would look back at me and he'd wink and he'd smile and say, carry on, coach. After 15 minutes, we finished the session. And I said to him, well, I said, okay. I said, I've done what you asked me to do. I've hit you on the head. I said 3 times. He said, yeah. He says, you did. He says, but you didn't get me out, did you?
Brilliant.
You know, every time the ball hit the gloves or it went down. And so he was so skillful. So, you know, there was never, for me, it was always going to be a natural progression for him to get to a very good place. And of course, he practiced when he was younger, when he was small, because he didn't have the power to hit the ball down the ground. He learned to play off the back foot with his cuts and pulls. And he also learned to sweep when he was younger. And that's come to fruition as he's, you know, when he went to Sri Lanka a year or 2 back, he swept, didn't he, and got massive runs.
Yeah.
So he learned to do all those things when he was younger. And his front foot game wasn't, he'd got the technique, but he didn't have the power when he was younger. But that obviously came as he got through his growth spurt and everything like that. He got that power, and then he learned obviously to play all around the ground. So it's been a pleasure to see it. I mean, he still keeps in touch a couple of times a year. We'll touch base. He doesn't forget. He doesn't forget them, Joe. He remembers people who supported him, and you know, he's a top lad. He's a great lad. He cares for other people. He cares for his teammates, and it's been an absolute pleasure to see how he's developed. And what I particularly admired is, I know we talked about, went through a difficult time at the back end of his captaincy, but he still made runs. Still made runs, even when, you know, there were things being said about that. And, you know, that just shows the deep resilience in the lad. And, you know, you take your hat off to him.
Indeed.
Where
One of my friends takes great credit for Joe Root's success, because Joe lived opposite him and he used to let the Root boys use his drive as a run-up when they were bowling at the other. Neither of them turned out to be quick bowlers, did they?
No. In fact, I bumped into, Billy played here a couple of times this year, and he was playing. I live on the back of a golf course here, and with a hotel next door, and Glamorgan were staying there, and Matthew came down for the day and had a game of golf with Billy, and I walked around with him for an hour or 2 and just had a good chat.
Yeah.
Kevin, where do you think his psychology, his thought process has come from? I mean, he's obviously very, very talented cricketer, but listening to you convey that story at West Indies, he was, in a sense, with all due respect, outthinking you. He was mind over matter. Where do you think that's come from? Is that just his character, or something he's been taught, or what?
Well, we're all unique, aren't we? But it's a cricket family, isn't it? It's steeped in, Grandad Don and Matthew playing at a very high standard of league cricket. They've grown up with it right from being born. They've grown up with I can remember when little Alfie was born, Joe's first son. I sent him a message of congratulations, and he sent me a message back of little Alfie with a little mini cricket bat in his hand, a week old. And he's a week old. So going back to their childhood, obviously 2 brothers as well, who played and be very competitive. They were both very, very competitive with each other. You know, they each one had to win. So at times there'd be a few punches thrown as well, you know, when they were younger.
So in a sense, they learnt the psychology before they learnt the actual game of cricket. It was inbred in a sense, yeah?
Well, I think he's a connoisseur of the game, and he would have read a lot, he would have watched a lot, he would have been down at Sheffield Collegiate as a child.
Yeah.
Watching and listening to the guys talk about cricket. And I mean, you know, he just absolutely adores the game.
Yeah.
And talking about the game and playing the game. And so the knowledge is, I can remember his first second team game it was at Abbeydale Park against Derbyshire, and he'd be 16 or whatever. And he batted, he opened the batting with Adam Lyth and he got 50 odd runs in his debut.
Yeah.
And his dad was filming, Matthew was filming from the edge. And so, and not long after Joe had got out, Joe walked round to Matthew to have a look at the video. And I can remember thinking at the time, I thought, oh God, this could, I hope this is not a bit too much, you know, a bit too heavy, that sort of thing. But what I realized very quickly was that, you know, once I got to know the family a little bit more, that the video stuff wasn't driven by Matthew, it was driven by Joe. He wanted to be filmed so he could check his technique out and where his feet were moving and all that sort of thing. So it wasn't, you know, like sometimes you think fathers can be a bit overbearing on their lads. Well, I wondered at first, I hoped it wasn't that, but I realized very quickly that it wasn't. It was actually Joe driving it, not Matthew. Saying, I want you to film me. I want you just to make sure my feet are in the right place and all that sort of thing. And you just think to yourself, wow, this is special.
Kevin, when he was smaller than that, obviously, he used to watch his dad play, like you've said, and my brother and I played against Matthew. He was playing for Steatley at the time, very good player. Yeah. And this little lad would have all the gear on, watch everything, but be playing against the pavilion railings on his own while the game is on. And the minute there was an interval, he'd be shouting his dad to come and bowl at him.
Yeah.
So from a very, I'm from a very, very early example of him wanting to emulate a good player and be a good player himself. I'll never forget that. It was amazing.
Right, Kevin, there was another batsman. Batsman.
They're all batsmen.
Yeah. At the same time, Johnny Bairstow.
Yeah.
What about him?
Well, I think that, you know, considering what Johnny's had to go through in his life, it's been fantastic to see how he's grown and developed into the fine young fella that he is. You know, having known Johnny as a child, obviously I was very good friends with David and knew Johnny when he was very young, and so, you know, to see where, you know, he's got to with this, it's rather special. I know that, I mean, Johnny at first, I mean, Johnny sailed through. It was a bit different to Joe, because Johnny actually sailed through youth cricket into academy cricket, into second team cricket, into first team cricket without suffering any setbacks, really. You know, he didn't have the issues with the growth spurt. He managed that quite comfortably. And he was very dominant all the way through his youth cricket into first team cricket. And you know, I mean, I suppose that from a technical point of view, there was kind of you know, first he didn't use his feet playing forward that well, so he'd get caught in the crease a little bit and get ball through the gate a little bit like that. So that's something that he's got better and better and better at over time. He's you know, he spent his hours practicing and improving that part of his technique. But I can remember it was actually, it would have been 2011. It was the first game of the new pavilion at Headingley. And Johnny was going, it was old, we played Warwickshire in a championship match there. And Johnny was going through the first run of poor form, really, and just lacking a little bit of confidence. And he got out in the first innings for not many, and he came in the dressing room and was this crash bang wallop. There was bats flying around, everything like this. And, you know, he was a bit upset with himself. And I can remember, you know, he was really tearing himself to pieces. And I walked through to 5 minutes later and I said, come on, mate. He says, oh, this crap. I said, come on, man, these things happen, blah, blah. Anyway, I had a conversation and he's obviously very down in the dumps, but it was the first time he'd ever gone through this poor run of form, really. So he didn't really know how to manage it. He found it very difficult to manage. And I can remember, he went out to bat. The game was finally poised, and we were batting in the last innings, chasing about, can't quite remember, but probably about 270, 280 to win on the last day of a Champo. And it was finally poised, and Johnny went into bat. We were something like 100 for 3, and I was sat next to Craig White, who was assistant coach at the time to Martin Moxon. And I just said to Craig, I says, I hope he don't get out early here, because if he does, he's could have a few issues with him here. And for the first 20 minutes of his innings, he could have got out any ball. He could have been out LBW, perhaps got away with one. He nicked it, it bounced short of slip, he got dropped. And he got through it, this 20-minute spell, and then he made 80 odd and won us the game. So everything was hunky dory then. there was no problems. But it's been a revelation just to see how it, and the one thing I've enjoyed about Johnny is such a fighter that he's been left out of that team so many times, but yet he seems to come back stronger, and that would destroy a lot of people.
Less than a minute, Keith.
Yeah, right. Okay, so Kevin, we'll switch. We'll end this session,
Right.
And have a cup of tea, and we'll see you in 5 minutes. Okay, so come
Perfect.
back on in 5 minutes.
Yes.
All right, guys.
Okay,
Thank you.
right.